The morning sun rose slowly over the jagged peaks of the rural mountains. High on a grassy ridge, a young shepherd named Tran watched his flock with unblinking eyes. He remembered his mother's final words echoing like a ghost in the mountain wind. She had warned him to never show his true power to anyone in the lowlands. To the world, he was just another commoner born with no future. But within his veins, mana flowed with the force of 1,000 rushing rivers. Suddenly the sheep began to bleat in terror, huddling together against the rocks. A heavy, suffocating aura descended upon the hillside like a physical weight. Tran reached for the leather sling tucked into his belt. From the shadows of the tall pines, a massive shadow leopard emerged. Its fur was made of shifting smoke and its claws tore into the earth. Tran did not flinch, even as the beast let out a bone-chilling roar. He picked up a smooth stone from the ground and placed it in his sling. A faint blue glow began to emanate from his fingertips, transferring into the rock. The leopard pounced, crossing the distance with supernatural speed. Tran swung the sling in a perfect circle, the air whistling with tension. With a sharp crack, the stone flew through the air like a streak of blue lightning. It struck the leopard's head, exploding in a burst of pure magical force. The massive beast crashed into the dirt, stone dead before it hit the ground. Tran sighed, retrieving his sling and checking his sheep. A soft clapping sound came from the edge of the clearing. An old man in a tattered cloak stepped forward, leaning on a wooden staff. His eyes twinkled with a mixture of shock and profound interest. Tran immediately tensed, his hand hovering over his hidden knife. The old man raised his hands, showing he meant no harm. He remarked that he hadn't seen such refined mana control in decades. Tran claimed it was merely luck and a well-placed stone. Kjorn laughed, noting that luck doesn't cause a rock to shine like the North Star. He introduced himself as Kjorn, a simple traveler who had seen much of the world. Tran watched him warily, sensing the deep power radiating from the old man's staff. Kjorn asked the boy why a talent like his was rotting away in a sheep pen. Tran replied that the world of wizards was one of blood and betrayal. Kjorn countered that the world was also full of wonders that a shepherd would never imagine. He spoke of the great libraries of Orum and the floating gardens of the south. For the first time, a spark of curiosity flickered in Tran's cold eyes. Kjorn told him that staying here would only lead to his discovery by the wrong people. More beasts like the shadow leopard were beginning to crawl out of the abyss. Tran looked at the dead monster and then back at his small, lonely hut. He knew that his quiet life among the peaks had come to a permanent end. He asked the old man if he truly knew the way to the city of Orum. Kjorn smiled, stating that they would start their journey at first light. But as they prepared to move, a low, rhythmic thumping vibrated through the ground. Kjorn's expression turned pale as he looked toward the northern peaks. A pair of massive, glowing red eyes opened in the darkness of the high cliffs. Something far more dangerous than a leopard had been drawn to Tran's display of power. The atmosphere in the mountains grew heavy as Tran sensed a second, more predatory presence lingering in the shadows of the tall pines. Kjorn placed a steady hand on Tran's shoulder, signaling that the boy should suppress his mana immediately. Deciding that the rural peaks were no longer safe for a talent of his caliber, Tran packed his few belongings into a leather satchel. He took one final look at his mother's worn spinning wheel before stepping out into the cold morning air. The journey to the city of Orum took 3 weeks of navigating treacherous mountain passes and winding river valleys. Eventually, the horizon gave way to the massive white stone walls of Orum, the crown jewel of the northern territories. Guards in polished silver armor eyed Tran's peasant clothing with blatant suspicion as he approached the main gate. Kjorn produced a weathered sigil from his cloak, causing the guards to immediately straighten their backs and step aside. Inside, the streets were a chaotic symphony of merchants shouting, carriages clattering, and mages displaying minor charms. Kjorn explained that they were heading to the estate of Hausberg, a noble family known for their mastery of elemental arts. Upon entering the Berg Manor, Tran was greeted by Ilara, the young heiress of the house who possessed a sharp gaze. Ilara questioned why an old wanderer like Kjorn would bring a common shepherd into their prestigious halls. Without saying a word, Tran held out his hand and manifested a perfect sphere of condensed mana. The sheer density of the magic caused the nearby chandeliers to rattle, leaving Ilara speechless. Seeing his potential, Lord Berg agreed to sponsor Tran's education in exchange for his service to the house. For the next several months, Tran spent every waking hour in the Berg library, devouring ancient scrolls on mana circuits. He learned that magic was not just about raw power, but about the precise calculation of atmospheric pressure and energy flow. Tran's training involved standing under a freezing waterfall while maintaining a heat barrier around his skin. Every muscle in his body screamed, but his cold-hearted pragmatism pushed him to endure the agony. Ilara often watched from the balcony, realizing that Tran's growth rate was unlike anything she had ever witnessed. One morning, a messenger arrived with news that a shadow stalker monster had decimated a nearby logging village. Lord Berg announced that an expedition would be formed to hunt the beast and protect the house's interests. Tran volunteered immediately, seeing this as the perfect opportunity to test his newly refined spells in live combat. The expedition party consisted of 10 elite knights and 2 Berg family mages, including Ilara. As they entered the Whispering Woods, the sunlight was quickly swallowed by a thick, unnatural fog. The horses became restless, sensing a predatory aura that felt both ancient and hungry. Tran closed his eyes, extending his mana like a radar to detect any disruptions in the air. Suddenly, a massive black shape lunged from the canopy, dragging one of the knights into the darkness. "Form a circle," Ilara shouted, her hands glowing with a protective frost magic. Tran remained outside the circle, his expression unbothered as he watched the creature's movement patterns. The shadow stalker revealed itself, a 6-legged beast with obsidian fur and glowing violet eyes. It launched a barrage of shadow needles, forcing the knights to hide behind their heavy shields. Tran calculated the trajectory and fired a high-speed wind bolt that intercepted every needle mid-air. The monster let out a screech, realizing its prey was fighting back with unexpected precision. "Now," Tran commanded, and Ilara followed his lead, freezing the monster's lower limbs to the trunk. Tran leaped into the air, his right hand wreathed in a swirling vortex of flames and lightning. The resulting explosion lit up the entire forest, vaporizing the beast and shattering the surrounding trees. As the smoke cleared, the knights looked at Tran with a mixture of awe and genuine terror. Tran noticed that the monster's heart had not been destroyed, but had turned into a strange, pulsating black crystal. This was not a natural creature, but a conjured entity fueled by a type of magic Tran had never read about. Just as the group prepared to head back, the black crystal in Tran's hand began to hum with a rhythmic heartbeat-like sound. A voice echoed in the minds of everyone present, whispering a name that made even the brave knights tremble. From the shadows of the forest, hundreds of similar purple eyes began to blink into existence one by one. The shadow stalker they had just killed was merely a scout for a much larger horde descending upon them. As the first of the new beasts stepped forward, Tran realized the crystal was acting as a beacon for something much darker. Tran stared into the darkness as the corrupted crystal pulsed with an unsettling rhythmic light. He crushed the stone in his palm, refusing to let the beacon summon any further threats to his path. With the forest expedition concluded, Tran realized that the answers to his mother's warnings lay far across the Great Sea. He boarded a merchant vessel bound for the Emerald Desert, masking his immense power behind the guise of a common guard. The salt air filled his lungs as the ship began its long journey into the uncharted blue waters. For days, Tran spent his time meditating on the deck, refining the mana flow within his core. On the 8th day, a thick, unnatural fog rolled over the waves, silencing the calls of the gulls. The lookout screamed a warning as the jagged silhouette of a pirate galleon emerged from the mist. Grappling hooks flew through the air, anchoring the merchant vessel to its predatory attacker. Dozens of scarred marauders leaped onto the deck, brandishing curved blades dripping with poison. While the sailors panicked, Tran remained seated, his eyes glowing with a freezing blue light. He stood up slowly, and a massive shockwave of mana erupted from his feet, knocking the first wave of pirates backward. The pirate captain, a giant of a man with a mechanical arm, roared and charged at the young shepherd. Tran didn't even flinch as he caught the heavy blade with a simple barrier of compressed air. With a flick of his wrist, Tran redirected the force, shattering the captain's mechanical limb into 1,000 pieces. He then raised his sling, placing a stone that hummed with the power of a falling star. The projectile tore through the air, obliterating the pirate galleon's main mast in a single thunderous explosion. Tran leaped across the gap between the ships, landing silently amidst the remaining terrified crew. He moved like a ghost, his mana blades cutting through the pirate ranks with surgical precision. As the last of the pirates surrendered, Tran noticed a strange glowing cage hidden beneath the main deck hatch. He tore the heavy locks away with his bare hands, revealing a creature of myth trapped within. Inside sat the mermaid prince, his scales dull from dehydration but his eyes still burning with royal pride. The prince spoke in a melodic echoing voice, pleading for release in exchange for the secrets of the deep. Tran realized that this royal captive held the key to the ancient divine treasures mentioned in his mother's scrolls. He agreed to the bargain but placed a magical seal on the prince to ensure his cooperation. The prince revealed that the Emerald Desert was not a wasteland of sand, but a hidden oasis powered by a buried star. Under Tran's command, the merchant ship was repaired using magic and set a new course guided by the prince. As they neared the desert coast, the water turned a brilliant shade of green, filled with ancient mana. The prince pointed toward a massive stone gate rising from the waves, the entrance to the Zahar ruins. Tran felt a resonance in his blood, a calling from the ancestors he had never known. The ship passed through the gates and the world transformed into a paradise of floating islands and crystalline waterfalls. The mermaid prince led Tran to the heart of the ruins, where the great star of Zahar awaited its true master. This was the ultimate treasure, the source of all magic that the nobles had tried so hard to monopolize. Tran reached out his hand steady despite the overwhelming energy vibrating through the air. As his fingers touched the surface, a pillar of pure light shot into the sky, visible from every corner of the world. The burden of hiding his identity finally vanished as the power merged with his soul, completing his evolution. He looked down at his hands, knowing he was no longer just a shepherd, but the sovereign of magic. Tran released the mermaid prince, honoring their pact and ensuring a lasting alliance between land and sea. He stood atop the highest peak of Zahar, looking out over the world he was now destined to reshape. The Untamed wizard had found his throne and the era of the nobles was finally over.